Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you for coming tonight. We're going to let everyone get into the room. It'll take a few minutes. I'm Brenda Peters. I'm the president of New Hampshire IDA, and I'm from Londonderry, New Hampshire. Where are you guys from? Go ahead and put it in the chat. All right, we have Bangor, Maine. Awesome. And Exeter, Nashua. Mary Higgins. Hi, Mary. She's in Derry. Oh, and Nancy Kring Burns. Hi, Nancy. Oh, and Susan is in Berwick, Maine, or South Berwick, sorry. Oh, we have lots of friends here tonight. Excellent. Okay, so as I mentioned, I'm Brenda Peters, president of New Hampshire IDA. We're so happy to have you here tonight with us for homeschooling with Claudia Golda-Dominguez, Marie Thibodeau, and Brittany Lovejoy. Okay, our upcoming Read for Parents webinars will include on July 11th, Dyslexia, Stress and Anxiety Connection with Noel Foy. We will also have on October 13th, Understanding Dyslexia with Melissa Farrell. And then finally, Spelling on December 8th with Dr. Louisa Moats. And those are all on Wednesdays and they're from 7 to 8. So we hope you'll be able to join us for those free webinars for parents and practitioners. If you aren't a member of IDA, New Hampshire IDA, please consider joining. As a reminder, New Hampshire IDA serves Vermont, Maine, and New Hampshire. When you join, you get a number of benefits, including connection with the community, which is our branch, as well as staying informed. We have a wonderful journal called Perspectives that's excellent. There are newsletters and new IDA TV. You do get discounts for the annual conference and conferences when you join, and you also get to be a member of the professional provider directory if you so choose. So there's lots of reasons for becoming a member. There are various membership levels listed here, but the one I want to point out to you is that for classroom teachers right now, it is free. So if you've never been a member before, for a year, you can sign on at no cost to you. Teacher memberships are very reasonable at $50, and that professional membership for $100 allows you to be listed on the website as well. So there are great avenues for you to consider. New Hampshire IDA, our branch, we're excited to bring you a number of things throughout the year. We have the Read for Parents, which is 6 times a year. Our annual conference this year will be on Friday, September 24th, and will feature Margie Gillis and Linda Siegel. We'll be talking about dyslexia and how it affects the whole child. In February, we do a Wilson Collaborative. We're also doing one in June as well. And in January, we always do a Project Read webinar. Those webinars are available to parents, to homeschoolers, and to teachers, and they're a great learning avenue. When you are a member, getting the webinar is free. You do have to pay for materials, but we also have a newsletter that's released twice a year in February and August, which is a gold mine of up-to-date information regarding dyslexia. Finally, we offer at least 3 scholarships for practitioners and parents as well. So, and those are listed on our website. All right, so without further ado, I would like to turn this over to our first guest speaker, Brittany Lovejoy.
Good evening, welcome. I'm Brittany Lovejoy. I have 4 children with dyslexia. 3 of the 4 have language-based learning disabilities, and One of them has stealth dyslexia, so I have a whole bunch of interesting children. And so you can see some of my profile work, the trainings that I took, but why I homeschooled my children is because it was necessary for their emotional and educational well-being. And I want to briefly speak about how sometimes I would use like a hybrid model where I would homeschool, my children would attend high school, but then I would take them and bring them to tutoring or have them come home and do some online tutoring. Or I would bring my son in a little later. And so I think the hybrid model has worked well for my family because I'm not really a math teacher. Thank you.
So my name is Claudia. I have homeschooled our two children for 10 years. We used an eclectic mix of various resources, and I'm also Wilson Level 1 certified reading instructor. So why did we homeschool in the first place? We homeschooled because it would allow us to spend more time with our children. In addition to the rigorous academic material, we also included extensive art curriculum, a lot of hands-on learning by being active members of FIRST, which is a STEM program. So we started actually in First Lego League, and we continued on all the way through FRC, which is a robotics program. Then we were also members of FCFCA, which is a speech and debate league. And in addition to all that, just in case if we were not busy enough, our children were able to achieve the highest national awards for scouting. We raised 2 guide dogs for the blind, and we homeschooled because it allowed us to give us all the freedom to also travel and do a lot of field trips, which are really a lot of fun. So, but I will be talking a lot more about where homeschooling ended up getting us. Besides the 2 guide dogs, we also got another farm, basically.
All right, my name is Marie Thibodeau. I just finished a year ago homeschooling after 26 years. I have 7 children, and 3 of those children really struggled to read and were dyslexic. Through the journey of teaching, homeschooling all my children, but my 3 dyslexic children in particular, along the way I became an OG certified tutor, and now I'm a teacher trainer for OG. Why did we homeschool our dyslexic children? Well, the homeschooling that we did allowed us to tailor the curriculum to the needs of our children, especially those children who struggled. And with the curriculum that we used, a lot of it was trial and error. Over time, we got better and better at what we did. Obviously, the OG training helped me a great deal. But through the journey of homeschooling, we learned how to help these children that were struggling to be successful readers and students. And of the 7 kids, 5 of them graduated from college. I was happy to see that they graduated from high school. But the other 2 are in college at the moment and have really become great readers and are very successful. So I'm offering that as an encouragement to you all that you can do it. So why would anyone homeschool a child with dyslexia? I mean, there's a lot of different reasons. Obviously, for some people, sending them to special schools, private schools, or boarding schools, even learning centers can sometimes be cost prohibitive. You may be able to, when you homeschool your children, you can find out the things that they're very interested in, and they can be successful in those things since they struggle in other areas. It also frees up a lot of time for your family to go on adventures and trips, and you're not tied to the school schedule. So when dad or mom has vacation, you can go somewhere and enjoy that. So it gives a lot of flexibility. Also, the homeschooling for me, especially with the dyslexic children, gave me a lot more time to give them one-on-one intensive daily intervention, which is what they needed to be successful. And Also, when my kids were in school, I didn't always know what they were doing day to day and how successful they were doing. Sometimes I didn't even know if they were turning their homework in. Or if sometimes I wouldn't find out that they were failing a class until weeks had gone by. So when you teach them at home, you can't escape knowing what they're doing and if they're doing well or if they're doing poorly, and you can address it right away. So anyway, so as Brittany said, there's different models. She spoke about the hybrid model. I did the what's called a homeschool umbrella model, especially when I first started, and I didn't really have the confidence to know, or the skills to know how to set up a curriculum for my children. So I enrolled in what's called a umbrella homeschool, and I researched the different curriculums that were out there, and I chose the ones that I thought would fit our family best. I did change after a while to one that was better suited. But what that means is that you sign up for a program and they do all the paperwork. They make sure that you're meeting your goals. They administer testing. They give consulting for you. So that was extremely helpful for me, especially when I was having problems with the struggling students in different areas. They could introduce to me programs that might be helpful from their vast experience. So that was very beneficial for us. So what are some of the challenges of homeschooling a child with dyslexia? One of the things that most people think of, and not just for dyslexic children, but for children in general, they immediately think of social isolation. And sometimes parents who are considering this journey are afraid that maybe their children will not develop normally socially if they're kept at home and taught at home. We never had a problem with social isolation, and the people that we're friends with, the large homeschool communities that we belong to, they offered so much in the way of enhancement for the kids' education through drama, through field trips, through labs, through all kinds of things, that oftentimes I had to stop the kids from joining things so they would stay home and do their math. I mean, it's just amazing when you start to get connected how much there is for your children to meet with other children, and how important that is for you as a parent. I want to say one thing that I was thinking about, social isolation. It's interesting with children that are in school, they often feel social isolation, but we don't really think about that. Especially my children that were in school that were struggling before I brought them home, they felt that they were stupid. They were afraid of what other people thought of them. They were falling behind. They really struggled with self-image. There was a lot of reasons that they felt isolated, even though they were in school. So, you know, that's an issue probably wherever you are that you can address, especially in homeschooling. There's a lot of opportunities. Another thing is that I know when I first started all those years ago, I was so overwhelmed by all the choices, which is why I chose to go with an umbrella school. But you can go on the internet and you will just be inundated with all the homeschooling options, all the curriculums, all the books that you could possibly read and use for your children. So there are a lot to choose from, and this is where you have to navigate with the help of mentors, I believe, through people that have done it successfully, and we'll talk about that a little more. Lack of expertise was another thing that was daunting to me. I knew that I couldn't teach some of the really difficult subjects in high school. I was afraid of that. You know, I didn't want to teach physics or chemistry. I was never good at those kind of things. But as I mentioned, the homeschool support network then becomes critical, because you meet with other more experienced parents, you network with them. The homeschool world is full of professional people that have taught all these things, who are now homeschooling their children, and you manage to meet these people, you seek them out, you find them, they find you, because you have your gifts to teach as well and to offer. And I was also part of a lot of homeschool co-ops where other people were there to help teach my children, and I taught theirs. So these groups are invaluable. You definitely want to connect with them. We put up a link there for the groups in the New Hampshire, Maine, and Vermont area. If you want to click on those links, you'll find a starting point for you to do some research yourself. So those are really good opportunities for you to. And the other thing that I think a lot of parents are afraid of is the switching hats from being a parent to a teacher. And I know for me, I was already teaching my kids a lot of things. I did a lot of homework with them after school. I did a lot of teaching extracurricular stuff. And so it wasn't that difficult a transition, but it does involve a great change in our lifestyle, which was good for us, but it is a change. So you have to be ready for that. So Claudia is going to explain the bare bones of how to get started.
So how do I get started? It can be overwhelming, as Marie mentioned, to get started. So the very first step should really be look at your homeschool law, the state and the town that you live in. A great resource to get started with it is HSLDA, which is a Homeschool Legal Defense Association. We posted the links there for the 3 states of the NHIDA branch, which is Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont. That's a really good place to get started. If you live in any of the other states around the country, you're welcome to go onto HSLDA main website and just choose your state, and it will guide you from there. Another area, as Marie mentioned before, it is very important for you to connect with others. If you connect with other homeschoolers, it takes almost that anxiety, the initial anxiety of oh my goodness, what am I getting myself into? And they really can help you and walk you through it. So great resources to get started are also like your local library, the YMCA. We posted a link and that Vermont is having a Zoom information session for homeschooling and special education support. So that is kind of a good place to get started. That is exactly what I did when we started initially. I just went around and I think I must have asked everybody who I encountered that summer, do you homeschool by any chance? Your kids, you're with your kids. Are you homeschooling? I mean, really, random strangers. I'm not kidding. Really, I did that. So that is a great start, great way to get started. Next thing, after you figure out what the law is in your state, in your town, you really need to sit down and reflect. Why am I going on this journey? It is a journey for your whole family. It's not about just the academics. It will change your lifestyle, your family. And it is really important that you reflect, what are your goals? What are you looking for to achieve through homeschooling? If your child was evaluated by a professional in school or anywhere else, please take the recommendation under advisement. There's a lot of wisdom in those other people who have a different perspective at your child, and it is so helpful a lot of times in choosing what kind of learner they are. So you don't have to start from the very beginning. There is no such a thing as a magic bullet for a student with dyslexia. We wish there would be. If there would be, I would have given anything for it, but there is not. The best magic bullet that I can think of is you have to teach your child directly, systematic, which means you have to do every day just a little bit, not a whole lot. You don't have to move a whole mountain. You just have to make one step, take one step towards that mountain. And the language has to be structured, meaning that there has to be a system to it. And we'll be talking about it on the next slide as well. Find other homeschool parents who have walked your path already before you, who homeschooled a child with dyslexia or another learning disability. Ask them what worked for them, what didn't, and why. Just because it worked for them doesn't mean it'll work for you. And at the end of the show, we have also some recommendations on what we did, what worked for us individually. And you will notice that not all the slides are the same because not everything worked for everyone. Lastly, it is very important to educate yourself and keep educating yourself. So NHIDA offers teacher conferences. That's how I got started. I also got Wilson certified. I kind of got hooked into all of this. I'm like, I need to know why and how, and that's how I did it. So a great resource to get started is Overcoming Dyslexia. And at the end, there will be also another resource to help guide you with a couple more references. What kind of instruction should I provide? So as I mentioned before, the instruction has to be systematic, and it has to be the language instruction systematic, meaning in little increments every day, no matter what. You have to do it every day. Be diligent about it. And it's not easy every day. You will not wake up every day and say, I am so ready to do this every day because the sun is shining. You will not be every day, but you have to do it every day. Your language instruction has to include two portions, a spelling portion and a reading portion. Your spelling portion, and I mentioned it underneath it, that it has to have sounds, letters, dictations, and it has to teach high frequency words. And this slide is a really good reference. So we will post the slide, and the slide will be available for you later on. But this is a really good start to get you going. Look what a good program has to include in those. And there's more of that technical language in there. You're welcome to look and reference it anytime. And the high frequency words are rule breakers that are breaking the English language. For whatever reason, we don't say it the way they are spelled because they break a rule here or there. So they have to be taught directly, and the child has to be memorizing them. And Fry and Dodge's sight word lists are good references for you to start. So the second portion of your direct language instruction with your homeschool student has to be reading, which has to include a warm-up, a review of previous concepts. And again, we review everything every single day, and not a whole lot, just a little bit every day. The goal for the student is to be able to read every day a passage that he or she can decode with 95% accuracy, where they are able to read it independently. Most importantly, we teach for mastery. If a student needs more time with a particular concept, we just take the time. That's the leisure of taking the time, that you have the time while you're at home with your student. So the instruction, in addition to being systematic and including the encoding and the decoding portion, which is the reading and the writing portions, has to be also multisensory. And this is all those are just examples on how you can do multisensory teaching. So our students, most dyslexic students, need to learn through seeing, hearing, saying, and doing or touching as well. So writing on a rough surface is exactly that. When you say a word to a child to write on a rough surface and the child says the letter names as it spells it, and says the whole word at the end, or writes it in the air through the gross motor skills, engaging their big gross motor skills, it really helps them learn better. And they are just the other examples on it. One of my children needed to study for a very tricky math test. She ended up using our driveway, the entire driveway, for her practice. She did fabulous on it, but it was a great conversation piece at the end. So those are just examples. Be creative, just be in the moment and follow your students' guide where they are taking you. As I mentioned before, there will be days when the sun won't be shining quite as bright, and you will need the second and third cup of coffee following the first one because you just started homeschooling and neither one of you are ready to homeschool. So we had some of those days, definitely, and education was not intended to take on one single day in one big chunk. You cannot climb the mountain by yourself in one day. You have to take step by step. And so on those days, we did the very basics, very minimum of the very basics, meaning we did our warm-up, our review, and we definitely didn't introduce a new concept on those days. And after that, for the sanity of everyone, you and your child remember, they are still your children by the end of the day. By the end of this homeschool day, you still have to sit down and eat dinner with them, and you really don't want this thing to build up. So I suggest to have kind of like a rescue me plan. So our rescue plan used to be doing like a scavenger hunt, or going for a field trip to a museum, or explore a park. If anything fails, explore your backyard. There are so many bugs you can find. And at the end of the day, don't forget to hug your kids. Do not forget that. So, because ultimately, homeschooling is not just about the academics portion of it. It is about the whole child and looking at the whole child. So here's a list of the curriculums that we use and we had great success with. And I'm going to, they're hyperlinked, all those bulletin points, and you're welcome to check them all out. The ones that I would like to highlight that were great out of the box, non-traditional book learning experiences was NCFCA, which was a speech aid debate league. Even for my dyslexic child, it was a great resource and such a help in helping them grow. First is a STEM program. It's starting very young. You can start as a FL Junior League in kindergarten. And that was actually our motivation to get our kids to do school. Because if you didn't do your schoolwork during the day or in the car on the way to first, you didn't get to go in, and that was like not cool. So it was a huge incentive for them to get their schoolwork done, especially for our son. Another great resource that we used was bookshare.org, which is auditory books that children have access to who have a learning disability. And last resource, we ended up homeschooling through high school. I cannot say enough on how much the community college in your local state is of a valuable resource. Both of our children ended up doing early college and did very well. The other thing is that you can use your community college for as a resource for those classes that you just can't teach. And as Marie mentioned before, yes, we were also part of co-ops and other things, but there were some classes such as calculus-based physics. They were really over my head. And so, you know, calculus one thing, physics is another. Put the two of them together, yeah, there's definitely a no-no happening here. But community college was able to fill that gap and really help our children gain and grow and experience and foster their interests in what they were doing. So I have a really fun story to share about what homeschooling taught our children, which was lots of perseverance. I never thought that, I knew that our children had a lot of perseverance, but I didn't know how much. So at one point, our child was really into animals, and she said, I want a dog. I'm like, not happening. So of course, then we ended up getting a guide dog, you know. So then she's like, well, I want chickens. I'm like, really? Well, fine. How about this? Because I know you're not going to let go of this one. I'm going to get you 5 chickens. So she got 5 chickens. We picked up a chicken coop from a local hardware store and assembled it. And it was all fine for a year, but chickens were maintenance. We had to, you know, maintain it, clean the coop, and it wasn't smelly very pleasantly. So after a year, I'm like, oh, good, she's done with it. She said, well, I would like more. Well, thank goodness this coop wouldn't hold more. So I'm like, sorry, can't have it unless. So of course, me thinking I'm smarter here, I said, I give you a challenge. I'm not a person to say no. However, if you can find a solution for the smell and the daily cleanings and maintenance of the coop, we can renegotiate. And she said, okay. She walked away. A month and a half later, I'm not kidding you, she brings up an iPad and she says, I found a coop that will solve all the problems. We have to clean it once a year. It will give us perfect fertilizer for all the plants around, and it is guaranteed not to smell because of how it is constructed in there. I'm like, child, really? She's like, yep, here is my research, here is my construction, and this is what we need to build it. So at this point, we have 14 chickens, and here they are. So yes, and we call it the chick therapy. So if you had a really stressful day, you just go in there for the chick therapy to detune. We have a couple of chickens that we nicknamed. Some of them are called Christopher Columbus, because they jump over the fence every single day and they explore. And then we have another one that is a pirate that hops on the shoulder as soon as you get in the coop. So they have a lot more personality than I initially thought. And I'm going to, from now on, really think twice about what I say and what challenge I give. But I know my children would not be able to do this without the perseverance that they learned through homeschooling in part. Okay. So now Brittany is going to talk about the resources.
Okay, so there's another fact sheet called Effective Reading Instruction for Students with Dyslexia, and that has that lists the 5 components of reading instruction, and it gives you a definition of what they are, though it doesn't give you programs to use, but it tells you precisely like what it encompasses. I also wanted to recommend getting this book. I have a little glare here, Essentials of Assessing, Preventing, and Overcoming Reading Difficulties by David Kilpatrick. Because when you do choose a program, he has a lot of programs listed here, and he'll tell you the pros and cons. And if your child does go back to school, you already have the resource and you've already accessed it. Though it's a really thick and heavy book, so if you get it and you're like, oh my goodness, I need to read all of this to understand, no, you can skim it. You can go to the back and look for Wilson, and you can look to see what he says about Wilson or any other timed versus untimed nonsense word task. Like, it's in here. I also recommend, I think one of the components that was really lacking for my children, because I had Orton Gillingham training and Wilson training, I didn't understand phonological awareness. And so there was a really huge missing piece. And I just finished a practicum for my OG associate level, and my student really had a phonological awareness deficit. And I realized how deficit I was in teaching phonological awareness. And so I'm studying that deeply at this point in time. And this book, oh, it's such a glare. I wonder how I can get rid of my glare. Well, I can't. So anyway, it's on here, and this is Kilpatrick's book. I think it's $55. There's Hegarty, and Hegarty is really inexpensive. There's Speech to Print from Louisa Moats that talks a lot about language essentials for teachers. And there's a workbook for educators. Oh, the glare. I didn't realize it would be so bad. Okay, so there's a workbook for educators as well. And I'm trying to get through this, and it's not easy. So if you're hearing all this information, you're like, oh my goodness, it's overwhelming. It is overwhelming. And I don't know if everybody else felt that way, but there's a lot out there. I included a free brief screener for phonological awareness. They say it takes about 10 minutes, but maybe it might take 15. I think that's really important. Okay, let's see. I'm going to read this quote that I had posted with that came from Louisa Cook Moats' book. And she said, a few brief activities, about 5 to 10 minutes a day for 12 to 20 weeks, are all that most young students need to improve speech awareness. Older students with reading problems may need daily practice within their literacy lessons for several years. And so the earlier we can reach them with phonological awareness, the better. And so that's something I just can't emphasize enough. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. Claudia, do you have control? Okay. Thank you. Okay, so I just listed some phonics programs. And then one thing that I noticed in the public school system that I've been a part of is that we didn't have a lot of decodable books. And so we may be doing a Wilson program, but then they're still using F&P books. And so at home, I want to just talk about some of the, these are Flyleaf Emergent Readers. I think they're absolutely fabulous. Right now they're free online. Reading A to Z decodables, those are relatively inexpensive. And you won't need them forever. So if you do pay, I don't know if it's $7 or $13 a month, you're not going to need to continuously do that. But these decodable readers are so important. And that's that part that Claudia was mentioning. So you have encoding, and then you have the decoding. And the decoding is so important for practice. One thing I love, let's see if I can do this on a whim. Okay, love about these books is on the very back page, and it's okay that you don't see the words, they have the decodable words in list. And so our students, sometimes they really need to have that extra practice. So I have my students read the list, and then we have the high frequency words that they know. And there's a few puzzle words, and puzzle words are like birthday. So we haven't talked about the IR controlled vowels yet. But, and then of course, while the student's reading, we would know that these puzzle words were words that they didn't know. And so if they come and they pause, we would just give it to them, birthday. And so these are really wonderful sequential readers. And like I said, they're free online right now to check it out. And hopefully that, that could be put in the chat possibly. Handwriting. One thing that, I don't know if your students are young, and it's always now the more I know as my children get older, the more I'm like, oh, if I knew this when they were younger. Oh, but anyway, this really simple pencil grip piece where you point the pencil out and you have your student pick it up and flip it. And then they have a real nice grip, and they can do it if you have a left-handed student, it works beautifully with a left-handed student or a right-handed student. And there's just a quick YouTube video, it's less than a minute. The list of free resources is really incredible. There's a lot of really good, there's writing, there's the components of literacy that that go into deeper, goes into deeper, that first resource I gave you from the fact sheet. It's an amazing resource. And then I talk about becoming a member of the IDA. One thing I didn't realize while I began attending these trainings that the IDA gave is they're so up to date, and they're grounded in like evidence-based. They're really they're informative, and I highly recommend attending as many as you can attend, but don't overwhelm yourself. You don't have to know everything right away. Okay.
All right, so I just have listed some of the programs that I used with my children that were successful. I'm not going to go through all of these. I'm just going to highlight a few of them, but they are all hyperlinked, so you can look into these if you'd like later. So one of the things is, as we've been mentioning over and over, there's particular programs that you need for your child who's dyslexic. And you want to make sure those components are in these programs that you use. So you're not wasting your time, and so you're very effective in teaching. So one of the latest finds, this is a relatively new program, is the All About Spelling, and also has a component for reading, All About Reading. I highly recommend this program. I've used it with my youngest child. I'm using it with one of my grandchildren as well. My daughter uses it with her. I recommended it to her, and she has no formal training yet, and she's dyslexic herself. So she is using this All About Spelling to teach my granddaughter in daily increments. And the beautiful part about it is it's laid out, it's scripted. She doesn't have to have a degree, in teaching reading. She can easily follow the program, and it follows for the most part, the scope and sequence of the OG method, Thornton Gillingham. And she's recommended it to all her friends, even if the children weren't struggling with dyslexia or reading problems. So I highly recommend that as a starting point. Like I said, I also have All About Reading that goes along with it. Hooked on Phonics is a very popular program. You probably remember the commercials for it way back. What I loved about that program is that you also didn't need a degree to do it. You could do it as a parent. But the readers are wonderful. They have decodable readers, just like Claudia was mentioning. You don't want to give your child books to read they can't read without, if they struggle a lot, they're going to be discouraged. So you want to have decodable readers that are based on their level. Sound Beginnings is an old program that's been around for a long time, is also very good. But the other, let's see, Brittany mentioned David Kilpatrick's books. There's one that we use, Equipped for Reading Success, that has easy 3 to 5 minute exercises you can do with your child. Very simple to understand and do. Fabulous resource for somebody homeschooling a dyslexic child. And then the final one I want to mention is the English from the Roots Up. This is this deals with morphology. They have cards, and they also do have a workbook that goes with it, but I only use the cards, and they're Greek and Latin roots. And little children can start to learn these Greek and Latin roots. And then once these children learn these roots, their understanding for the language is just enhanced so much. So I recommend that, because that's super easy to use too, and only takes like 5 minutes a day, 5 to 10 minutes, and your child will feel great about it. Okay, so we really appreciated that you've listened this far to our presentation. Here's a few takeaways. Homeschooling will be a process and a learning process for both you and your child. You do not begin by knowing everything, just like in most things in life. You're going to have to learn through your mistakes, trial and error. And you obviously will know you're not good at everything, and so you're going to have to outsource. You're going to have to find people to help you to fill in those gaps. I think that one of the most valuable things was getting a tutor, an OG tutor for my children, when I was aware that they needed that, and then of course becoming one myself. But it was really important to find people that knew what they were doing to help me. Then this is one of my favorite quotes: "Comparison is the thief of joy." My friend said, "Well, we all do that." And I said, "That's true. We do all compare ourselves to others. But when we're aware of it, we should stop ourselves, especially in the journey of homeschooling, because you can go to somebody else's house and they may be great in science and you're not. And you may think you're a lousy homeschooler because they're doing science experiments on top of their refrigerator or in their basement. And you don't do that because you don't like snakes and lizards and spiders. But you have your gifts, your family will have your own particular strengths and weaknesses as well. So there's no point in comparing yourself. You will be doing it your own unique way, and that's fine. That's good. Likewise, probably one of the biggest hurdles when you're teaching and working with your own child who's dyslexic is that other children may make leaps and bounds in reading and writing and all those things, and your child is just plugging along at 2nd grade level, 3rd grade level, maybe they're supposed to be at 5th or 6th grade level. But if you understand that your child is learning and is learning at their own unique way, and that you're giving them the right program, you can be at peace about that. They're uniquely gifted. They will have gifts that other kids won't have because of their struggles and their perseverance. So like I said, your dyslexic child will learn differently. You have to embrace that and adapt to it. And I'm going to give you a little example of something that happened in my own life that was really telling. My son, my youngest son, had struggled tremendously in school and at homeschooling. He struggled tremendously at homeschooling, but we were persistent. And in high school, we were part of a co-op, and he so much wanted to do an anatomy and physiology class. He just begged me, and I just thought, this is a college level course. He has great difficulty with remembering things. And I finally said, well, it's your decision. You can do it, sure. So he went into the class, and I had great trepidation. And sure enough, he was failing the class, and he was doing very badly. He was getting like 20% on all his quizzes. And about 3 weeks in there, I said to him, listen, you don't have to do this class. You can do something totally different. You like other stuff. We can switch out. And he said, no, I'm not quitting, which was great. And I appreciated that. But I also was wondering, how in the heck was I going to help this child be successful? And then I realized, I forgot. He learns totally differently. Why don't I help him to approach this course from a multisensory point of view? And so I got him a skeleton. He had to learn 200 something bones in the body. That was impossible for him. He couldn't do it. but I got him skeleton, got him little sticky notes. We labeled all the bones in the body. He put them on, he took them off, he put them on, he took them off, and he got a 98% on his test. He aced it. He was so over the moon, you can't believe it. Then we did the same thing with the muscles. We did it. We got 3D models of the brain. We got 3D models of the heart. We just, you know, we did everything possible that he could touch it, feel it, put it back in, say it. I used all my skills that I knew as an OG teacher. And he ended up at the end of the year getting a B, which was fantastic for him. It was a very difficult course. So it was a very proud moment. It taught me a lot about how to accept my child where he was, how to embrace the differences, and to be a coach for him, you know. And then the final 2 points are decide what's important and do those faithfully, like Claudia said. And a little done consistently and systematically wins the race. So we take small chunks, we do them faithfully if they're important and we've committed to them, and we will be successful. So thank you all for listening to this, and we open for questions.
So we have one question so far, and Annette asked, how does one source a mentor?
That's a good one. Yeah, we were just discussing that. How do you find a mentor? My mentors came through the homeschool community that I was part of. And we were talking about what a great need there is for homeschool mentors, where people who aren't part, I mean, we hope you all join a homeschool community because you do need to, but if you're just beginning, we were thinking there needs to be people out there that are listed as homeschool mentors. But I would say that you can look on your maybe HSLDA. Claudia, I don't know, maybe you can speak to that.
Yes, I think definitely HSLDA is a great idea. They are a tremendous resource, and you can call them and they're very approachable. Also for me, when we started initially homeschooling, I didn't know what to do. Even though I did talk to pretty much every single person I encountered that summer, I'm pretty sure everybody was kind of like avoiding me by the end of the summer because they knew I would be like, did I ask you already if you homeschool yet? We went to the Y. I heard that they are doing a swimming lesson for homeschoolers. I said, hey, we are homeschoolers now. That's for us. Because back then I really thought I should attend every single field trip. I learned. And there was actually a homeschooler who lived on my street. I had no idea she lived on my street. So she actually ended up being a mentor mom to me, which was amazing. Like, she talked me up the cliff on those days when, you know, I needed it. And then I got to hear a lot of times, well, Miss So-and-so is so much nicer than you, Mommy. I'm like, really? And so, but definitely local, other resources like your HSLDA, umbrella schools will be a great also. As Marie mentioned, she was part of one. Your local clubs, do not underestimate who is going and attending them, especially during the day, during those school hours. The homeschoolers are pretty much everywhere. They are doing a lot of field trips, and that's how you meet the people.
I think I would add to connect maybe with your local IDA as well and ask them who they may recommend for mentors, or local learning centers. Everyone has, you know, sometimes it's different. There's different titles to your learning centers, but places that definitely service children with dyslexia or students with dyslexia, and to ask them if they have anyone who would be interested in helping with a mentorship. I don't think that this mentorship model, what I would hope to see in the future is like a really robust mentorship model where maybe the mentor can do some beginning assessments with your student and then give you some information to help guide you in the beginning process, because it's so difficult. Like even Marie said, you know, she hired an OG tutor before she became OG certified, and it's complex and deep, and we don't really want a whole lot of time to go by. And so it's worth reaching out to people who have certain credentials. There's like the Orton Gillingham Academy has a website with people who have training, who have been trained. And so maybe you could even access that and look into who. Brenda, do you have any more suggestions?
Other resources for dyslexia, the Children's Dyslexia Centers at our national website has a list of practitioners. IDA also has a list of practitioners. CERI, the Center for Effective Reading Instruction, has a list of practitioners if that's, you're looking for practitioners. But you guys were so informative and I learned so much about homeschooling. I didn't realize that there were different umbrella programs and hybrid programs, and very, very interesting. And I love the resources that you all shared. I think that'll be great for our families. I just want to remind everyone that the PowerPoint will be available as well as the video. We will upload them and have them available on the website within the week. Let's see, what else did I want to say or have questions about? I agree, Overcoming Dyslexia is a great place for families or of children who have dyslexia to start. It was one of the first books I read, really like it. And I love her new second edition as well. I did have a question. Are you required as homeschoolers to like measure progress? Do you have to do annual testing? And how does that, what do you do?
So, so depending, Marie, if you don't mind, you like Marie and I, we pretty much, everybody does something different. We are all unique in our own little ways, but at the end, we still have to do, depending on the state that you live in. So that's why I mentioned the reference from HSLDA, and there is a particular, different states have different requirements, I guess what I'm trying to say. And sometimes it really depends even on the district. So it really is a good idea to research that very, very first. And if you're part of an umbrella school, as Marie was, I'm pretty sure she can speak to that, how that is. But for us, we didn't choose an umbrella school because we did a very eclectic mix of curriculums. So our speech and debate, the children put an extensive amount of time. And I counted that towards their English sometimes, or sometimes debating, depending on the subject that they were debating. One time it was the Middle East studies because they were doing a policy debate about that. So we wrote our own transcript. And then at the end of the year, after I constructed the courses, so they are counted by hours similar as the school, we have to either do a formal training, we have to have a portfolio evaluation, and there's a third one. I can't think of it right now, Marie.
So in New Hampshire, there's 3 ways of having it done. You can have do formal testing. You can take the California Achievement Tests, or maybe the Stanford or the Iowa Basics. You can have a teacher come in and look at your curriculum and measure, like, especially if you have the same teacher from year to year, who's looking at, here were your goals. Is your child making progress? Because, if you're dealing with a dyslexic child or children with learning disabilities, that was for me the best way to go, because my children were doing tremendous amount of work during the year, but some of my children would maybe not have passed the test because they got test anxiety and couldn't do it within a certain time. And so but to have a teacher, a New Hampshire certified teacher, come in and evaluate what I was doing and make suggestions was very helpful. And then, like Claudia, that's similar to the portfolio, I think, idea, because it seemed like that. I don't know. And then when I did the umbrella school, that was such a huge help to me, because they sat down with me and, well, it was a school in California, so it wasn't, they sat down with me we're now in a Zoom world, so that's probably what they're doing now, but they sat across the country on the phone helping me to arrange the curriculum for my child. And then periodically throughout the year, I would have to send samples of the work that they had done. They would have to take little tests. They would evaluate it. They had a special education part of it, so that my dyslexic children could be evaluated differently. They gave me suggestions. We changed programs to fit the kids' needs. It was incredible, really. So there's fabulous programs out there. And there's just so many resources, but I would think that was a very good way to start if you're considering homeschooling a child with dyslexia and you're going to be doing it all day. Otherwise, you can go to your kids can do part day in school too. We've done some of those things as well. So I don't know if that answers your question, Brenda, but. Okay.
It does. Thank you. That's very interesting. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
Does anybody else have any questions? Anybody in the audience? You want to type it into the chat? We have a couple more minutes. How about our panelists? Any other comments you'd like to add?
Claudia wanted me to say there's no right and wrong way of homeschooling. And I would say that maybe there is some people that do it the wrong way, but all the parents that I know are so dedicated that they go to the ends of the earth to try to get what their children need. And they're very creative. People do it in completely different styles. Like I said, that's why you can't compare yourself, because I had, friends that their husbands were scientists. They were, hikers, and they did all kinds of nature studies. That just wasn't my thing. I wasn't going to be doing that kind of thing, but I did different things. So every family is going to be unique.
We have one more question. And it's it's an excellent question. There are so many different programs for teaching reading. Is it better to pick one and stick with it, or try a few? That's the question.
Well, what do you think, Brittany? Do you have an opinion? Does anybody?
Well, if you're going to pick, okay, I'm going to say to pick one is probably not going to be enough, because there are there's many components to literacy. And I would pick one, but I would note that I would need to also have phonological awareness and morphology, which is the basic unit of meaning. And so that's where the Greek and Latin roots come in. And it's very complicated. But so if you're going to pick one, like a phonics. So if you're going to pick a phonics program, then yes, pick the phonics program and stick with it. But don't forget to utilize the other, there's like 5 components of literacy. Don't forget to note that you're going to need these other components. I don't want to take up too much of the ending here. So if anyone else has.
I would say that you have to if you have a program that's highly recommended and does meet those components that we discussed, the number one thing, honestly, is if it's user friendly. It has to be something you can do. So early on, I did something called the Writing Road to Reading. I couldn't make heads or tails out of it. And it was a frustrating program. I know people that used it successfully, but I couldn't, because I didn't have the background understanding. That's why I highly recommended that All About Spelling, because somebody could easily access that. It's based on scientific research, how it's effective instruction, and it's laid out clearly. So that worked for me. Every student is different. So I think it's good to try things, and after a little while, if you reach a threshold of frustration, then you need to think about doing it differently. That's my opinion.
Yeah, and if you're going to take a course, like let's say you take an Orton Gilliam course, there could be scholarships involved, because it is expensive, and you might seek out scholarships, or the Vermont non-degree grant, or if there's a New Hampshire component. But with Orton Gilliam, you do a practicum under a fellow, and so at the discretion of the fellow, sometimes you can have your child be the practicum student. That is at the discretion of the fellow, and so that would need to be arranged prior to. But that could be a place where you get this wonderful mentorship, and you can work with your student.
Excellent, excellent.
Yes,
well, thank you. Oh, go ahead, Claudia.
Well, I was going to say, sometimes, yes, curriculums can be amazing and you may love it, but you and your child has to love it. I have only 2 children, and I couldn't use a single curriculum for both of my children. because they were both different learners. So I think you really need to take your child's learning habits and learning type into advisement, even if you love it. And language is so complex that reading is just like, as Brenda said, you know, it's divided into so many different segments. You need to, they just learn differently all.
All right. All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone. That was so informative. As I mentioned, we will have the video and the PowerPoint on the website shortly, within the next week. Just a reminder, there is an upcoming in Vermont, and we do serve Vermont. There is the Vermont Homeschooling webinar on June 17th at 11 o'clock. And you can click here to register for this free webinar. So, and this PowerPoint will be available with the active links. And then next on August 11th at 7 o'clock, we'll have Noelle Foy. She'll be talking about the IDA fact sheet, dyslexia, stress, and the anxiety connection. So please join us for that. And last but not least, thank you, Claudia, Marie, and Brittany for this excellent presentation on homeschooling. Thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful evening.